when President-elect Donald Trump takes office. In just 10 days, he will become the first sitting U.S. president to have a criminal record. Trump appeared virtually Friday morning for his sentencing in the New York hush money case. Judge Juan Merchan granted the president-elect an unconditional discharge.
In a historic first, the United States is about to be led by a president who holds the dubious title of being a convicted felon 34 times over. Donald Trump, now the 47th president, faces an extraordinary reality, a criminal record that coexists with the immense power of the Oval Office. Let's dive into what this unprecedented chapter truly means. His return to office marks an unprecedented moment in U.S. history, raising critical questions about accountability and the justice system. Convicted on 34 felony counts for falsifying business records, the charges stem from hush money payments made during his 2016 campaign, an effort to keep alleged affairs with individuals like Stormy Daniels under wraps. The idea was simple: keep the scandals out of the headlines and secure the presidency. And guess what? It worked. But those decisions have come back to haunt him, turning what might have been a footnote in political history into one of its most controversial chapters. And then there's the sentencing, or lack of it. Judge Juan Merchan, presiding over the New York case, handed Trump an unconditional discharge. That's a fancy way of saying Trump faces no jail time, no fines, no probation, nothing. He walked out with a conviction but no consequences. Does that even make sense? It's not every day someone with 34 felonies walks free, but in this case, Judge Merchan explained, the hands of the court were tied. Why? Because the conviction involves a sitting president-elect, and the legal and political implications of sentencing him would have been unprecedented. So, while Trump may now officially be a felon, the actual impact on his day-to-day life or presidency is, well, non-existent. But let's rewind a bit. This case wasn't as straightforward as it may sound. Trump's defense team, armed with well-practiced arguments and a knack for stalling legal processes, pulled every lever to delay the inevitable. At one point, they even argued that sentencing Trump before the 2024 election would hurt his chances of winning. That strategy worked, and the sentencing was postponed multiple times. First to July, then to September, then finally to January after the election. And surprise, Trump won. At that point, the stakes for sentencing had shifted dramatically. The courtroom was no longer just about justice, it became the backdrop to a broader constitutional and political dilemma. How do you sentence someone who is about to become the leader of the country again? This unprecedented situation forced Judge Juan Merchan to navigate uncharted legal territory. Balancing the integrity of the justice system with the extraordinary implications of sentencing a president-elect, the stakes were unlike anything seen before. Trump's public attacks on the court, including inflammatory remarks about Merchan's family, added to the already volatile atmosphere. Ultimately, the courtroom transformed into a stage where justice and political power collided in a way that will reverberate for years to come. Judge Merchan, who had already faced public attacks from Trump, including inflammatory comments about the judge's daughter, was careful to avoid even the appearance of bias. He emphasized that the courtroom's integrity and the rule of law must remain intact, even as Trump continued to belittle the legal system on social media and in public speeches. Trump, in his usual style, claimed the entire case was a politically motivated witch hunt. He insisted that he'd done nothing wrong, repeatedly calling the payments to Michael Cohen for Stormy Daniels' legal expenses. According to him, labeling them as such in business records was perfectly normal, something his accountants, not him, were responsible for. But the court and the jury didn't buy it. After weeks of testimony and evidence, Trump was convicted on all 34 felony counts. Yet, even with the conviction, the Supreme Court's shadow loomed large. In the landmark Trump v. United States decision, the court had ruled that former presidents couldn't be prosecuted for actions taken during their time in office. Trump's legal team argued that this precedent offered him presidential immunity, even though most of the offenses happened before he entered the White House. The argument didn't stick in this case, but it served as a reminder of the murky waters surrounding presidential accountability. And this wasn't the only legal battle on Trump's plate. At the time of his sentencing, he was juggling 4 major cases, 2 federal and 2 state level. The federal ones, legal analysts predict, will likely vanish into thin air once Trump appoints a new attorney general who could dismiss them outright. That leaves the state cases, including another high-profile one in Georgia, involving allegations of election interference, but even those are unlikely to gain traction during his presidency. Why? The Constitution's Supremacy Clause generally protects sitting presidents from state prosecution while in office. For Trump, it's as though the presidency itself has become his shield against accountability. This brings us back to New York. Judge Merchan's decision to hand down an unconditional discharge wasn't about letting Trump off easy, it was about navigating a situation for which there was no playbook. After all, this wasn't an ordinary defendant standing trial, this was the president-elect of the United States, a man about to assume immense power. To impose any sentence, house arrest, probation, fines, would have been seen as interfering with the will of the voters who had just elected him. For For better or worse, the justice system was cornered, and so Trump walked away with 34 felonies on his record but without any immediate repercussions. The decision was as symbolic as it was controversial, cementing Trump's place in history as a convicted felon who nonetheless wields unparalleled political power. Critics argued that this outcome undermines public trust in the justice system, while others saw it as a pragmatic move to prevent a constitutional crisis. Judge Merchan himself emphasized that the protections afforded to the presidency are extraordinary, but they are tied to the office, not the individual. Trump, however, used the lack of punishment to bolster his narrative of victimhood, painting himself as a target of political persecution. In the end, the case left the nation grappling with a troubling question: what happens when justice clashes with democracy? Now, let's talk about the historical and symbolic weight of all this. Trump's status as a convicted felon sets a troubling precedent for the presidency. While the conviction doesn't disqualify him from holding office, it raises uncomfortable questions about the standards to which leaders should be held. What does it say about the rule of law when a person can ascend to the highest office in the land despite being convicted of crimes? And what message does it send to the public when the judicial system is seen as bending to accommodate political realities? These are questions that legal scholars and political analysts will likely debate for decades. Beyond the academic debates, the practical implications are equally profound. Trump's conviction will likely embolden future leaders to test the limits of accountability, knowing that legal consequences can be mitigated by political power. It also forces Americans to confront the fragile balance between democracy and the rule of law, where voter choice can override even the most damning legal outcomes. Internationally, this precedent could undermine the US's reputation as a beacon of justice and integrity. Allies may question the credibility of a nation led by a convicted felon, while adversaries could exploit it as evidence of hypocrisy. Domestically, the case has further polarized an already divided electorate, leaving many to wonder if justice can truly be blind in the face of political power. The ramifications of this moment are far-reaching, ensuring that it will remain a pivotal chapter in US history. But perhaps the most frustrating aspect of this entire saga is the sense of finality, or lack thereof. Trump's legal team has already announced plans to appeal the New York conviction, and with his newfound power as president, he'll have every resource at his disposal to fight it. If the conviction is overturned, it will be as though this entire trial, with all its drama and controversy, never even happened. On the other hand, if the conviction stands, it will remain a historical stain on Trump's legacy, even if it doesn't carry any practical consequences. Either way, the resolution feels incomplete, as though justice was only half served. What about the civil cases? Unlike the criminal ones, those are likely to continue during Trump's presidency. Cases like the defamation lawsuit from E. Jean Carroll could result in financial penalties, though they lack the same dramatic weight as a criminal trial. Still, they serve as a reminder that even the most powerful individuals aren't entirely above the law, at least not in every context. And that's where we are now. Trump is preparing to retake office with a conviction hanging over his head, a legal playbook that seems to work in his favor, and a justice system that appears constrained by the realities of his position. Does this mean Trump is untouchable? Not exactly, but it does mean the American legal system, much like its political system, is being pushed into uncharted territory. The next 4 years will likely test the boundaries of accountability in ways we've never seen before. Will Trump face consequences for his actions, or will his presidency once again shield him from the repercussions of his behavior? The answers to those questions will shape the legacy of not just one man, but an entire era of American politics. What do you think this means for the future of the presidency? Should someone convicted of serious crimes be allowed to hold the nation's highest office? And how should the justice system handle cases like this in the future? It's a debate that's far from over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history's most controversial presidency, hit like, share, and subscribe for more riveting insights into the legal and political stories shaping our world. Stay tuned, there's much more to uncover.